The Aorus 15G gaming laptop has a mechanical keyboard which is amazing to type with, but there's more to it than that. I'll show you if it's worth considering in this review. My unit has an 8-core Intel i7 processor, Nvidia RTX 2070 Super Max-Q graphics, and 16GB of memory and dual channel with a 240Hz screen. There are different specs available though. You can check others and updated prices in the video description. Overall build quality is decent, but the design will come down to personal taste as that's subjective. It's a little too aggressive for me. The lid, interior, and bottom panel are all aluminium with a silver finish. The edges weren't too bad, but could feel a little sharp on the front depending on the angle you brush up against them, but I never had an issue during normal use. Despite the metal lid, there was some flex, though the hinges felt smooth and sturdy, and there were no problems opening it up with one finger. It felt pretty well balanced and sat fine on my lap. Chassis flex was pretty average, again no problems at all during everyday use. My config weighed under 2.3 kilos, and we're looking at 3.1 kilos or 6.9 pounds with a 230 watt power brick and cables for charging included. The width and depth are decent for a 15-inch gaming laptop, though it's a little thicker compared to others with similar specs I've recently tested, but we'll see if this helps improve temperatures soon. The smaller footprint results in 6mm thin screen bezels on the sides, but with a thicker bottom chin. There are different screen options available. I've got the 15.6-inch 1080p 240Hz option. There's no G-Sync or option of disabling Optimus here, and although the graphics are max-Q, there's no dynamic boost in this unit. I measured the screen's average gray-to-gray response time at around 7.7 milliseconds. There's a link in the description if you need an explanation on these numbers. It's close to a lot of other laptops tested, but we need 4.16 milliseconds for all transitions to occur within the refresh window. I've measured color gamut with the Spider 5 and got 97% of sRGB, 68% of NTSC, 74% of Adobe RGB, and 74% of DCI-P3. At 100% brightness, we're looking at 319 nits and an 880:1 contrast ratio, so some fair results for a gaming panel. Gigabyte calibrates at 2, so it should have a delta E of less than 1. Backlight bleed was a little patchy, but I never noticed it during normal use, but this will vary between laptops. There's a dead pixel near the center of the left half, but that's just my review unit, so I have no idea if some other reviewer may have caused that. It would get shipped around a lot. Either way, I wouldn't expect that to be an issue if you were to buy it, as most companies will let you return for that. There's a 720p camera underneath the screen, and it's got a physically sliding privacy shutter, but no Windows Hello support. As that camera is down the bottom, there's no way of adjusting it. This is what typing on the mechanical keyboard sounds like, and your fingers do kind of get in the way a little bit. Here's what it sounds like if we set the fan to full speed. It's pretty loud, and it's not doing a great job of isolating my voice. The mechanical keyboard is what makes the 15G unique. That's just not a common feature that we see in gaming laptops. The Omron switches have 2.5mm of key travel and a 1.6mm actuation point. They felt great to type with compared to most other laptops. Here's how typing sounds to give you an idea of what to expect. So definitely louder key presses, which is typically the nature of mechanical switches. All keys and secondary key functions are illuminated. It's got per key RGB lighting and has 2 levels of key brightness, which can be adjusted by holding function and pressing the spacebar. I like that the power button is above the keyboard in the center, so no chance of an accidental mispress. And there appears to be some air ventilation holes back here too. The precision touchpad clicks down anywhere and feels very smooth to the touch. It worked fine but felt a little small. Maybe it's just in my head, as some is taken up by the fingerprint scanner in the top left corner. I found it to work fast enough, and it still worked fine even with my finger on different angles. Fingerprints don't show up too much on the silver metal. They were more noticeable on the black touchpad and keys, but they're easy to clean off the smooth surface with a microfiber cloth. On the left from the back there's an air exhaust vent, HDMI 2.0 and mini DisplayPort 1.4 outputs, USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type A port, 3.5mm audio combo jack, and gigabit Ethernet port. The Ethernet port might get in the way, but this is preferable than the right side. On the right from the front, there are 2 more USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type A ports, Thunderbolt 3 Type C port, full-size UHS 2 SD card slot, the power input, and an air exhaust on this side too. The HDMI and mini display ports on the left are connected directly to the Nvidia graphics, so good to go for VR. However, the Type C port on the right goes via the Intel integrated graphics, and you cannot charge the laptop over Type C. The back is just air exhaust vent, vents, and nothing on the front other than these sort of holes or vents in the middle. The Aorus logo on the lid lights up white from the screen's backlight, so cannot be modified. Underneath, the back half of the machine is pretty much all air ventilation, which is great to see. This is something Gigabyte have done in many of their models. Getting inside involves taking out 12 TR6 screws, and inside we've got the battery down the front, two M.2 storage slots, one on the left of the battery and the other on the right above it. The Wi-Fi 6 card is above this one, and the two memory slots are near the middle. The two 2-watt speakers are towards the front on the left and right sides. I didn't like how they sound. At max, they sounded high-pitched and almost painful. Better at low volume, but still tinny without bass. The latency mon results looked alright though. Like many other laptops from Gigabyte, the 15G has a 94 Wh battery. I've tested it with the keyboard lighting off, background apps disabled, and with the screen set to 50% brightness. The results were reasonable with over 6.5 hours in the YouTube playback test, but not as good as some others, especially those Ryzen options towards the top. Let's check out thermals next. We've got a couple of fans for cooling and two heat pipes shared between CPU and GPU, along with some VRM coverage. The Aorus Control Center software has a lot of customization available. There are 5 different levels we can set the CPU to, and 2 for the GPU. I've got the power limits these set listed on the left, but none of the modes applied any overclocks. Along with that, there are 3 built-in fan profiles, quiet, normal, and gaming, which offer different fan curves. But you've got the option of defining your own for optimal performance. You can also press the function and escape keys to set the fan to max speed at any time. Unfortunately, undervolting was disabled by default, and I didn't see any option to enable it in the default BIOS. However, it appears people have modified it to allow this, but use that at your own risk. It definitely wouldn't be covered under warranty. Thermals were tested with a 21 degrees Celsius ambient room temperature. Idle results down the bottom were fine. Stress tests were done with the Aorus-64 CPU test and Heaven GPU test at the same time, and gaming was tested with Watch Dogs 2. The 0/0 number refers to the CPU and GPU power levels that can be defined in the Control Center software, so the lowest power options, while 5/1 would mean max power. The CPU is thermal throttling anytime it's at 90 degrees Celsius, so Gigabyte are capping it here rather than letting it run rampant. I only saw the GPU thermal throttle while gaming with a normal fan profile, but boosting the fan speed removed that. Now I know people just hear thermal throttling and get turned off, but some people prefer a lower cap like this instead of being limited to running up to 100. These are the clock speeds from the same tests. Interestingly, the clock speeds of the GPU are highest in quiet mode. CPU speeds improve as we increase the fan speed. As we saw in the last graph, it was always thermal throttling at 90 degrees outside of quiet mode in these heavy tests. Even with the fan maxed out and a cooling pad though, we were a fair bit off the all-core turbo boost speed of the i7-10875H. If we had the option of undervolting, we'd be able to close that gap. These are the power limits being hit in these same tests. With the GPU set to the lowest mode, it runs at 80 watts, as expected, and was otherwise at 90 watts. The CPU power limit is increasing as cooling improves. In quiet mode, I found it interesting that XTU was reporting current limit throttling rather than power limit throttling, so I'm not sure how they're limiting performance in that mode. Here's what we're looking at with a CPU-only workload, Cinebench R20. We have the option to further boost performance by using XTU or throttle stop to increase the power limit above the default max of 62 watts. I didn't do this in the previous CPU plus GPU loads, as thermals were a limit anyway, so it wouldn't have done anything. When we look at how the best case boosted result compares with other laptops, well, it's not great. To be fair, it's better than the Razer Blade 15 Advanced, which has the same processor. That's towards the bottom and hanging out with the 6-core options. But still, the Aorus is one of the lower 8-core results I've recorded, both for single and multi-core performance. The keyboard area was sitting in the mid-30s at idle, pretty standard and no problem. With the stress tests running in the lowest performance mode with the quiet fan curve, it's still on the cooler side. It's pretty similar when we boost the power limits and step up to the faster normal fan curve. And again, not too different with the gaming fan curve enabled. The higher fan speed counters the increased temperatures that would be associated with the performance boost. With the fans manually set to maximum, it's doing extremely well. The rest and WASD area was in the low 20s. Worst case, it's low 30s in the middle of the keyboard. So very cool to the touch given what's going on inside. Let's have a listen to those fans. The fans were basically silent at idle, then got progressively louder, stepping up from quiet to normal to gaming. Max fan speed is on another level compared to the others, which explains why it was so cool to the touch even under heavy stress test. I look at this as a good thing though. As there is granular fan control here, you've got the option of tuning it how you like, which beats a lot of other laptops that just force you to a couple of options. Now let's check out how the Aorus 15G performs in games and compare it with some other laptops. In Battlefield 5, I've got the Aorus 15G highlighted in red. Compared to others, it's doing pretty well for a 90W GPU, similar to the higher wattage non-super version in the 7i just underneath. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of 2070 super data yet to compare to. These are the results from Far Cry 5 with ultra settings in the built-in benchmark. It's just 7 FPS below the 2080 Super at the same 90W power limit in the Blade 15 Advanced. Like I've always said though, there's generally diminishing returns for your money once you go above the 2060. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was also tested with the game's benchmark tool with the highest setting preset, and the results are pretty similar to the other games. Now for the benchmarking tools. I've tested Heaven, Valley, and Superposition from Unigine, as well as Firestrike, TimeSpy, and Port Royal from 3D Mark. Just pause the video if you want a detailed look at these results. I've used Adobe Premiere to export one of my laptop review videos at 4K, and the Aorus was alright compared to higher GPU options, but at the same time, not that much ahead of the lower spec and cheaper Wi-Fi 40. I've also tested Premiere but with the Puget Systems benchmark, which also accounts for things like live playback rather than just export times. It's getting exactly the same score as the MSI Creator 17 with lower wattage 2080 Supermax Q. In Adobe Photoshop, the Aorus was lower compared to the others, which makes sense as this is a processor heavier test, though it's not quite as bad as the more expensive Blade 15 Advanced, as that has harsher power limit caps. In DaVinci Resolve, it's actually doing quite well. The score was much higher this time as this test is more GPU focused compared to the last one. I've also tested SpecViewPerf, which tests out various professional 3D workloads. I've used Crystal DiskMark to test the storage, and the 1TB NVMe M.2 SSD was okay. Not as good as most others tested though. The UHS-2 SD slot was pretty good though, close to maxing out my V90 card, and the card sticks out a bit when inserted. For updated prices, check the links in the description, as prices will change over time. At the time of recording, in the US, the 6-core with 1660 Ti starts at $1,700 US. $200 more gets you the 8-core with 2060, then it's a $400 step up to the 2070 Supermax Q I've tested here. The non-super is currently on sale for less than the 2060 though. Here in Australia, we're looking at $2,700 Australian dollars for the 1660 Ti model, then more based on the spec. As you could get the CPU plus GPU combo for less elsewhere, I can only assume the extras, like the mechanical keyboard, are pushing it up. With all of that in mind, let's conclude by summarizing the good and bad aspects of the Aorus 15G gaming laptop to help you decide if it's worthwhile. The keyboard is definitely the star of the show. If you're someone that does a lot of typing but doesn't need to do it in a quiet area, then the mechanical keyboard alone could be worth considering. Most others that have this are typically bigger machines, though there are others that are decent, like the Electronics Mech 15G3. But in my personal opinion, the Aorus does feel better. Overall build quality with the all-metal design felt nice, though I wasn't personally a fan of the edgy, gamery design. There's a good selection of I/O, though it would have been good to see some Gen 2 USB instead of all Gen 1. Port placement might be annoying for some, but that's part of the compromise to have air exhaust vents at the back. The screen had good color gamut and brightness. Lower response time to take advantage of the refresh rate would have been good though, and I can't really take points off for the dead pixel, as that can happen regardless of laptop. Again, this is a review unit, and I have no idea how others have treated the machine. It would get shipped around a lot. The bezels are slim at the expense of the bottom camera, but hey, at least it's got one, unlike some others out there like the G14. The cooling looks good, but the performance wasn't where I'd like. There are big vents underneath, and the fans can get quite loud. Props to Gigabyte for always giving so much granular fan control, but I think the 90-degree limit might start hurting them in the benchmarks. It's always going to be a trade-off. This way it can't get too hot, but it also means when compared to alternatives, your performance starts looking lower, and this was particularly clear in the Cinebench comparison. To be fair though, the gaming performance was still great, but it would have been nice if we had the option of disabling Optimus for an extra performance boost. Let me know what you thought about the Aorus 15G gaming laptop down in the comments, and if you're new to the channel, get subscribed for future laptop reviews and tech videos like this one.